Hello everyone, it's 𝐒𝐻𝐳, and this morning I listened to the latest Arca album, kiCK. Arca has actually released 4 brand new albums this week alone. Just a few days ago I listened to the album kiCK for the first time and loved it. It was actually my first time ever hearing a full Arca album. You can see my video about that album with the link up here. And I saw a lot of very good things being said about this new but apparently very different album in the kiCK series, kiCK. So I decided to dive straight into it today and see how it compares to kiCK. The rest of this video will be highlights from my live stream over on Twitch, where I listened to the album in full for the first time. If you want to join me for more full album listening parties, you can follow me over there at twitch.tv/𝐒𝐻𝐳. So do me a favor and click the like button on this video and let's get into the album. So here we go. Track 1 is called In the Face and track 2 is called Pu, P-U.
How does one coax in the face of pain? How does one coax?
Very dark opening.
Of pain.
Makes me think of the Undertale soundtrack, this. The sparseness and the kind of longing melody is very Undertale. Well, that was very easy to listen to, wasn't it? Very calm and sparse, as we said. Very different to kiCK, my goodness. I mean, who knows where it's going to go from here, but it's just, it feels very personal, doesn't it, so far? Like, it's very insular sounding. The intro was extremely foreboding. And then track 2 was, I imagine, the creator curled up in a ball, if you know what I mean. Let's see where Arca takes us from here. Track 3 is called Chiquito. Something of the Minecraft soundtrack in this one. Funny that all the references so far we've used are video game soundtracks. So Arca is very clearly slowly building an atmosphere with this, layering something new with each track. Of course, this one putting the vocals much more prominently. And the vocals were definitely the darkest thing going on in this one. Introspective is the word. Absolutely. It feels very insular. And yeah, it couldn't be more different to the atmosphere of 3, could it? Still, I have to say, so far it's feeling quite slight. And I can't help but wonder where it's going. You know, I think something more is going to need to happen. I can't help but compare it to very stripped back video game soundtracks. Like we said, especially that of Undertale. And in that last track, I was feeling like the nighttime music of Minecraft. The creepiness was becoming more prominent in that last track, and I'm expecting it to only become more prominent as we continue, because I mean, look at the cover art. It's kind of hellish looking, but also beautiful and ornate. All right, into track 4. It's called Estrogen. More Minecraft vibes, I have to say. So I was wrong for now. This is not pumping up the creepiness at all. This is actually very pretty. And it seemed to me that there was something a little bit more harmonically complex about that track compared to the previous ones, which were very simple. It was really beautiful. That being said, I'm still sort of wondering if more is going to be made of this. You know, is the album really going to remain this stripped back? Let's find out. Track 5 is called Ether. Still with that longing beauty, but there's some darkness bubbling below it with some of the note choices. So even though that one did continue the sparse aesthetic, I did find that one a little bit more satisfying than some of the previous tracks. Like started with the track before it, there was something a bit more harmonically interesting going on in it. But also the way that the reverb increased as it went on meant that it kind of became more and more wondrous, I suppose is the word. I noticed you guys pointing out it had that kind of stargazing feel, and yeah, I felt that too. I was also reminded of something like some early Boards of Canada track that I don't remember, something like that. It had that kind of feeling of nostalgia. That was a really beautiful one and probably my favorite so far. Track 6 is called AMREP. A little bit more intensity building in this one compared to the previous tracks, which I think is a good move for the album. Wow, okay. The distortion in that one was actually quite bracing, which was very welcome. After the moods of the previous tracks, which I enjoyed very much, Arca managed to find a way to up the intensity without really affecting the aesthetic too much. It was basically a similar approach to previous tracks, but just with a distortion and an extra level of of darkness built up into it. I thought that was great. It was really satisfying after so many tracks of sparseness to really fill up the stereo space for a while. Next track is featuring a vocalist named Ryuichi Sakamoto, who I'm not familiar with. Any of you guys? It's track 7 and it's called Sanctuary.
Experimental diva FM. A mutant.
This is a pretty major change in mood as well, this one.
The first time you died. And a mutant faith. A mutant faith. Vanity.
Nice. So that song really felt to me like a sort of culmination for the album. Like it had been teasing to something like that for a little while. It combined the distortion and darkness of AMREP with some of the beauty towards the end of the previous tracks. But yeah, the first half was quite frightening, actually. A little bit harrowing, wasn't it? But yeah, by the end it opened up more, and still with some distortion keeping us a little uncomfortable, but definitely the sky opened up a little. Yeah, like I say, combining elements from earlier in the album into quite a satisfying track, and I did enjoy Ryuichi Sakamoto's vocal contributions. On to track 8. It's called Tierno. Nice to hear Arca's voice again. It's like a very old style of singing. Wow, that was gorgeous. And I never would have guessed that Arca could even sing like that, or would even choose to. I'll enjoy hearing that approach taken more. Yeah, that was a really beautiful track. I don't know how memorable it necessarily is in terms of composition, but the sound of it was lovely, and there were plenty of moments that were quite moving. All right, on to track 9. This is called Musculos. What is going on here? What a contrast, though. It is reminding me of something like Thom Yorke's The Eraser. Wow, okay. That was a fascinating track. It was the longest song on the album and definitely earned it. Like it still fits in the aesthetic of this album so far, but at the same time it felt like nothing we've heard yet. Those rhythms, the electronic drums, we haven't had anything like that so far, and they were very unusual. And then with the sort of neoclassical vocal style Arca employed over the top of it, I don't think I've heard anything quite like that. There's something kind of unrooted about it. Like it's coming from somewhere that I'm not quite familiar with. It's coming from an unfamiliar place. And yeah, definitely I feel that it's something that Arca's been aiming for a lot of this album. Make us feel that she's taking us somewhere that you haven't been before. And I think that track did it better than any. Very unusual. I will say that like most of the record, the melodies, the harmonies, they seem to drift. you know, as the tracks go by. Like she's constantly exploring, which is of course interesting in its own way and compelling. It will remain to be seen after another listen or two how much it actually sticks with me, or if it just continues to be a kind of amorphous kind of creation, which is what it feels like on first listen. All right, track 10 is called La Infinita. For a mostly ambient album, it's very emotional, it's moving. Alright, I have to say that track to me felt a little less compelling than some of the previous ones. And especially considering it was almost as long as Musculus. It was really nice. And yeah, I think that Drux comparison's absolutely fair, Rob. Arca could probably do a great job soundtracking some kind of emotional science fiction story, no? Because the music's very moving, could really lift a perfect story. But that being said, I do think that Arca is telling her own story through this music, which maybe in some of her other songs she does so more explicitly, but from the beginning this album has felt very insular and like it's telling a personal tale, and I do appreciate that. Just 2 tracks left, and track 11 is called Fire Prayer. Goodness me. Yeah, no messing around with this track, and very emotionally potent straight away. You're right, Al. Sia has a writing credit on this. This actually sounds like something Sia might have written now, right? It definitely felt like the least alien track, that one, partly because of the piano break, but even just the chords throughout, it was a little bit more conventional. But I have to say, I still loved it. It was very beautiful, quite moving, and definitely well placed in the album. Maybe a little more could have been done with it, but still, it reached a nice peak. And we're right at the end of the album now, guys. Almost feels like that song could have made a good ending, you know, if it was like faded out a little more. Some kind of a motion picture soundtrack style ending. We'll see what she does with track 12, last song, which is called Crown. Feels like some of what I heard on kiCK3 is breaking its way in here. Kinda can't believe this. My God. That got me a little choked up. I kind of had in my head the highlights of the album, you know, lined up in my mind, like Sanctuary and Musculus in particular. And for me, that last track just blew them out of the water. It was quite incredible how deftly she was able to continue the mood of this album with perhaps one of the best compositions in the style of this album so far. But not only that, but layer all this incredible production and hard-hitting percussion on top of it. It just sounded amazing. Because yeah, she'd been doing this kind of gentle, neoclassical video game soundtrack influenced sound for most of the album. She employed it so beautifully there on that last track, but just like crafted it into this incredible work. It was just at the same time so moving and so hard-hitting. It was everything I wanted. Everything she had explored throughout the album just came together in that last song, and you don't really get that very often. Like where all the ideas that have been explored thus far are just perfectly encapsulated into one perfect track. I don't know if I'm being overly hyperbolic here, but that's how it felt. Definitely felt to me like the crowning achievement. But yeah, Crown, what an amazing song. And yeah, the album was not what I was expecting at all, I have to say. I love the overall aesthetic of it, but it really was not what I expected going into it. I suppose I don't know what I was expecting, but I wasn't expecting what we got at all. You can definitely see that Arca and 𝐒𝐻𝐿 have been on the same page for the past few years. But yeah, the album was really something different, felt very unique, Very special. This is very obviously not created as a soundtrack. And it feels, like I said earlier, it feels to me like Arca is expressing something personal through this music. And yet it feels very inspired and influenced by that whole world of deeply emotional soundtrack music that many of us love in those celebrated, very much loved video game soundtracks. I probably am not as blown away by this album as I was with kiCK3, which is probably predictable. You know, kiCK3 is very hard-hitting, very involved, and very memorable a lot of time. A lot of catchy tunes on that album, despite it being quite aggressive. But this album was much more of a sort of emotional experience and journey. It's beautiful for that. But yeah, a very different animal. So let me know down in the comments what you thought of this album. Where does it rank for you in the kiCK series? If you'd like to see my full unedited reaction to this album and many more, check out my Patreon. You can find a link to it in the description. I'll really appreciate the support. It'll allow me to keep doing these streams and making these videos. And thank you very much for watching. Until next time, take it easy.